Welcome to the Making Up for Freak Guitar Accident. And today we're going to go over something a little bit different. Instead of showing you the VFX behind this piece, I'm going to show you how we wrote the music and got Nico's guitars sounding really awesome. Shredding tips. If you're using pre-made royalty-free soundtracks, usually they'll do the job and set the tone. But if you want a piece that dynamically shifts with everything happening on screen, you're going to need an original soundtrack. Now there's a couple applications you can use to do this, all of which have their own specialty. FL Studio, Ableton. Those are great programs if you want to do a lot of MIDI, loop, or sample-based work. There's also programs like Pro Tools that allow you to really excel in doing live recording for your pieces. I personally use Logic 9 because it balances both really well. I have a lot of synthesizers and MIDI instruments I can use, as well as recording a lot of live guitar and bass. So when taking the first steps of putting music into your piece, usually it's best to take the most epic, cool part of the song that you enjoy and sync that up with a specific scene. That way you have a reference point that you can work outwards with. So for Freak Guitar Accident, that moment is when Nico first starts whipping out his guitar and playing that first riff. So even if you're gonna have original music in your piece, it's best to have a temporary track you put in there just so you have a feel of the flow of the piece. It can be anything from just a song you like to another movie's soundtrack, but just something that sets the atmosphere and tone so you have something to edit to. For Nightmare, we used parts of the Lord of the Rings soundtrack just because I knew eventually I was going to want to have a piece that sounded very similar to that. So how did I come up with the song for Freak Guitar Accident? Well, I was sitting there trying to write a couple riffs for the piece, just seeing what kind of stuff I could come up with. And eventually I kind of came upon an old riff I had made for our band, The Keep. And it just kind of seemed to fit the feel and the tone of it. It was very heavy, it was very melodic, and it had a lot of good moments for kind of soloing and guitar wankery. So for recording the piece, I would play guitar and bass, and then I would use a MIDI controller to play a sampled drum kit. All these instruments I would be running through a lot of Native Instruments plugins, such as Guitar Rig and Contact. So here's a couple tips on getting your instruments to sound great. Firstly, it's all about layering. Almost every single instrument I have playing in the song has some sort of companion layer that gives it a little extra kick and oomph. For drums, I start with a normal kit I'm playing on a MIDI controller. I duplicate the bass and snare and have those run through like an 80s drum type sounding sample. And for the guitar, one great trick I like doing is offsetting the layers a little bit. That way you get a really great stereo sound that really brings the richness and fullness out of it. Here's a quick run through of all the layers I have going in the music. I start with the bass here, which is the drum and the kick. Then I add real drums on top of that. The bass comes in and follows the drums very strongly, as well as the rhythm guitar. Then I put the lead on top of that to play the main melody. Now, you'll notice that when I play each section of the song, you can still hear the rest playing very clearly. That's because of mixing. When mixing a song, you have to recognize that every single instrument occupies a very specific space in the mix. For drums, you have the kick in the low end, and the snare and cymbals in the upper mids to highs. I like the bass guitar even lower than the drums with a little bit of mids for definition. And so it doesn't compete, I bring down the lows and raise the mids for the rhythm guitar. And then for the lead guitar, I do the same while boosting the highs even more. The key to this is that by not having all your instruments overlapping and occupying the same frequency, your ears are able to distinguish each one from each other and brings the song a lot of clarity that sometimes you wouldn't otherwise get. So I hope you guys learned something from this video. I'm also uploading a multi-track of this song to our server so you can download it and listen to all the tracks that I used in this song. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, I've uploaded a guitar tab for this song. If you want to use the multi-track and record your own version of it, we'd love to see what you guys come up with. If you guys have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments box or send us a tweet at Corridor Digital. Right in front of my face here. Nice and perfect. Alright guys, that's all. Laters. Oh.